and welcome back to Hilltop Stovetop, the show where we teach you how to make great meals in an everyday, ordinary kitchen. Today we're tackling something special after having just finished all of the leftover turkey, other than what we need for the turkey and dumplings in a future episode. Last night was turkey satay, so it was wonderful. But today we're switching back to beef and we're going to be making meatloaf. And this is a special shout out to one of my subscribers who did specifically request that I show you how to make meatloaf. And do keep that in mind. If there's something that you would like to learn how to cook, put it down in the comments and I'll see how I can fit it in. So today, back to making meatloaf. And this is a really good sort of thing to know how to do because this mixture is good for more than just meatloaf. It also works for meatballs. And I also use the same thing for hamburgers, except with the hamburgers I add the secret ingredient, which is ground up bacon right in the hamburger. So I'll show you at the break what some of those things look like here. So today we're going to start off with basic lean ground beef, and this was fresh from the butcher. I actually saw him grinding it. It was just wonderful, and it's I do use lean ground beef. Some people will ask if I put pork in it or use beef with a little bit higher fat content. I don't find that that's necessary. All I end up doing is pouring off the excess fat anyway. So we're going to start with this amount. Now I've measured it out in my pan, and this is about 1 kilogram of ground beef, or just under 2¼ pounds. And that's about the right amount for the size of pan that I have. If you've got a different size pan, you might need a little less, a little more, either or. And of course, do make sure that you wash your hands before you start this because we are going to be getting really down into this. The other thing that you need with this is something to absorb some of the moisture. So I prefer to use oatmeal. This is 3/4 cup of rolled oats, just regular quick oats that you would make porridge with. I have here half of a cooking onion, diced absolutely as fine as I can. I actually did this in the food processor, but again, I did that before the camera started rolling because I actually had to fix my makeup afterwards. I was crying so much because cooking onions are very strong. If I had something like we were using last week with the turkey where it's a veleta of onion, I really have trouble saying that. That's a milder onion. I might use a whole onion. In this case, I'm just using half an onion. And back to my old friend, the Better Than Bouillon. If you don't have this is this beef paste. You can use a bouillon cube. Now I'm going to use about a tablespoon of that. And that's all of the seasoning that I use because this has got, it's more than just beef. It's got a certain amount of seasoning in it, and I find that it's a nice mixture, and I can add extra flavor with sauces or something like that. Some people like to add a little barbecue sauce to theirs or ketchup. I like to maybe put ketchup on after I've cooked it. Whatever your own tastes are. I mucked around with a whole lot of variations over the years, and this is what works for me. The last thing I'm going to add is an egg. And this is going to add as a binding agent, just like it did in the stuffing that we made with our turkey. And then we just get in here with again, you could get some fancy tools to do this. You can do it in your food processor, but it works just as well to get in with your hands and knead it around and get all of this stuff nicely mixed in. Make sure you got the onions mixed in well and that you have your bouillon properly mixed in here. Now you notice that you can actually see the little flecks of oats in here. And this is, they'll kind of disappear as it cooks and they brown. If you do it in the food processor, that all gets homogenized together, but this is absolutely fine the way it is. Okay, so there we go. Now, if all you were going to do is plain meatloaf, you could take this mixture and put it in your pan, pop it in the oven at 350 for 45 minutes or so, and you're done. But we're going to pimp it out just a little bit, make it a little fancier for you. So I've got two options. The first one is I've taken my pan here and I've lined it with bacon. So we've got that, and that's going to end up on the top when we're all done. So I'm going to take about a little more than half of this meat and plump it down on top of the bacon. And I'm going to make a little hollow in the middle. And I'll just set this off to the side so you can get a better view of what I'm doing. Because one thing I kind of like to do, and you'll notice this, is I kind of like to hide vegetables. So here I've got some leftover broccoli, and I've got some of that smoked cheddar cheese that we used originally in the How to Make an Omelet video. And I'm going to squish that down into it. And then I'm going to put the rest of the meat on top. Get a little bouillon on the fingers here. Okay, and then we'll just fold these little bits of bacon back over the top. And there's meatloaf 1 ready to go into the oven. Pretty simple. All right, so now there's meatloaf number 1 ready to go. Now meatloaf number 2, and this I'd pre-mixed before the cameras were rolling, but it's the same mixture. Other than this one I had put through the food processor, so you'll see how the oatmeal is a little bit more inconspicuous. But again, this one, well-greased pan, but no bacon on this one. And this one, I'm going to again make that little hollow. Now what we have here is some slices of Swiss cheese. Swiss cheese is a relatively low-fat cheese. It doesn't have to be slices, that just happens to be what I had in my refrigerator. So we're going to put a little layer of those down. And then I'm going to put just a bit more of the meat up on the sides here, because we don't want anything sneaking out the edges on us. And then I have a mixture of caramelized onions and mushrooms. And then I'll put a little more Swiss cheese on top. You can tell this cheese, I mean, it even looks a little drier than a lot of cheeses. Okay, and then we're going to put the rest of the meat in on top of that. And again, pack it down well. And there we go. We're ready to pop these into the oven. And we've got our oven set at 350 degrees. And just the rack is on the middle, just the same, nothing fancy there. And these are going to take about 45 minutes to cook, but we're only going to put the timer on for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to check on them and drain off some of the liquid, because that will help with the browning process. So I'll set my timer here. Oop. There we go. wash up our hands, get all this beef off of them, and then we're going to have a little chat. So while we're waiting for our meatloaves to cook, we'll talk a little bit about other things you can make with that same mixture. First off are the meatballs. And so here we have, this is exactly the same stuff that I put into the meatball or into the meatloaf pan, other than I just put it into little balls. And how I did that, you can just take a spoon or something like that, but I have this nifty little, this mini ice cream scoop. I got this from Lee Valley Tools, and this is handy not just for meatballs but also for scooping out cookie dough. So it's a very useful tool. I probably use this once a week or so. Having meatballs like this is handy. If I bought a whole bunch of hamburger on sale, and I'm going to cook these all up 25 minutes at 350 and then put them already cooked into the freezer, so that if I need a fast dinner, I can just warm them up, add a little bit of sauce to them, put them with some rice, and we're good to go. The second thing that I use that meat mixture for is my hamburgers. The only thing is that I add bacon crumbles to it. So you can't see very much of a difference here, but these do have actual bacon. It's about a quarter, maybe a fifth bacon to the rest of the hamburger. And I make the patties, it's 2/3 of a cup of the meat mixture. And you'll notice that they have an indentation in them. And the reason I do that is they're quite a thick patty. If you put an indentation, I just squish a little shot glass down into them. That makes it easier to cook in the middle without burning the outer edge. So those are two very quick things you can do. Again, these hamburgers, I'll put them on the barbecue today and cook all of them so that they're in the freezer, and I've got a couple of fellas that stay with me and they can just warm them up for a quick lunch and I don't have to worry about it. So that's the two things that you can do. Now, another thing that I want to talk about while we're sitting here waiting is a thank you to all of my subscribers and my viewers, because this is officially our 10th episode. And it's kind of a milestone. So I thought it's time to have a little chat with you and answer some of the questions that have come up in the comments or on Facebook, that sort of thing. So the first thing I want to address is my outfit here. I call this my YouTube uniform. And you'll notice that I do wear the same thing every episode. And sorry about that. You'll notice that I do wear the same thing every episode. And that's because sometimes we're cutting scenes from one and moving on to the next. And it's just easier if I'm wearing the same clothes and we don't have to worry about changing or where things came from. It's not that I don't have other clothes. It's just this is the uniform. And pretend that it's just my chef's outfit, even though I'm not really a chef. Second question that came up was about the mural at the front of the house. When you're seeing the opening credits, there's a picture of my house with that green and gold mural. The title of that mural is Bonisher Kites, and it was painted by a very good friend, Tom Campbell, who's an artist from Almonte, Ontario. And I'm going to put a link to his Facebook page down in the description, because he does some lovely work, not just abstracts like on my mural, but also landscapes and life forms and some beautiful things. So if you have a look at his Facebook page, you'll see all that he has available. It's beautiful stuff. Third thing, we want to talk a little bit about recipes, or the lack of recipes. You may have noticed in all of my videos that there's very few times when I put an actual recipe in the description. And the reason for that is that I want you guys to learn the techniques and to be imaginative. Don't be afraid to try putting different mixtures of things in. If it's something that needs a very specific proportion, yes, I'll tell you, and I'll put it in the description. But if it's something that you can just say, Ellen added this or Ellen added that, then feel free to try something new. Be bold. It's okay. The The next thing I wanted to talk about was why do people on YouTube always talk about, oh, please like and subscribe? And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't understand, that as a creator, as we're called, it makes a difference to YouTube how many subscribers we have. The more subscribers we have, the more likely our videos are to come up in the view. So I do appreciate it if somebody clicks on that subscribe. All it means is when you go into YouTube, it's easier for you to find my my videos as well, and it really helps me out if you can just click that little button. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was my chair. You probably have noticed that I sit in this lovely little swivel chair here in my kitchen. I don't do it all the time when I'm not doing videos, but it's a chair that I had from a few years ago when I'd hurt my back, and the only way I could cook was to be sitting down. But now I find it very handy because my poor photographer here, or videographer, has to deal with this, what truly is an everyday ordinary kitchen. This entire kitchen is 8 feet by 10 feet. So he doesn't have very much room to set up all of his camera equipment and to be moving around himself. And by having me sit down, it means that he's not getting all the bottoms of the cabinets in the shots because he has no other way to step back that far. So that, I think, answers the questions that have come up so far. If you've got more questions, feel free to add them. And I've had a couple of other requests for items to show you how to bake them. First up is our next episode upcoming, which will be how to make pumpkin pie. Again, keeping with our holiday theme, but I have had people specifically ask me how I make my pie crust. So we'll do pumpkin pie as part of that. And then the week after that, we've got a special request from the east coast of Canada that somebody's asked for blueberry grunt, which is a blueberry dessert that is lots of fun. If nothing else, the name is fun, and it's a traditional sort of dessert for a holiday meal on the East Coast. So those are two things that my subscribers have asked for. If there's anything else, any other questions you have, or any other requests, just add it in the comments. Thanks. And now we'll check on our meatloaf. All right. So we're just over the half-hour mark in our meatloaf process, and we will just see how we're doing here. I think they're pretty darn close to being done, but we're going to do a couple of things just to finish them off. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of the excess liquid off of them, because that will help with the browning process. There we go. So that's the first one. Just be careful because this stuff is really hot. And you'll notice that because I'm using lean ground beef, while there is liquid off of this, it's not fat. It's just beef juice that's coming off. So you'll notice that even though there is liquid coming off of this, it's not fat because we used lean ground beef. Okay, and now what we're going to do, I'm just going to check, make sure that that's loose around the edges, and this one should be too. We're going to get them browned on the other side. Now this is definitely something that is optional, but particularly for this one that has the bacon on it, it's going to be make it look very nice. So I've got here a broiler pan where the excess moisture can drain away, and I'm just going to flip that out. Whoop, there we go. And I'm going to do the same with this one that doesn't have the bacon. So we did them in the pans to start with so they kept that shape. But now what we're going to do is we're going to take this And we're going to pop it back into the oven and let them brown up for the last 10 or 15 minutes back in the oven. And while that is cooking in the oven, and I'm going to turn off the light because we don't want it cooking unevenly, I've got a little pot here. And for those of you that have been watching for a while, you saw our episode on how to make gravy. And I did say in that episode that if you had leftover gravy, to take them and freeze it in ice cube trays so you had gravy moving forward. So we've got a little bit of liquid here, so I'm going to pop that in my pot. But I'm also going to reach over here to my nifty little Ziploc bag full of gravy. And this is what happens when you put them in an ice cube tray. So we're going to add that in there. And I'm going to add a little bit of boiling water. And while we're finishing up that meatloaf for another 15 minutes, we'll get this, get the ice cube or the gravy cubes melting and make some beautiful gravy. And I think that actually, I think this gravy was chicken gravy, but we won't tell anybody. And we'll just take just a titch of our beef bouillon again. And not very much, maybe half a teaspoon to add to that. And that will darken it up, give it a little bit more beefy flavor. And we'll have some great gravy to go on that, on the plain meatloaf in particular. Some gravy will go nicely with that. The other thing that we can do with that plain one is, at the point where it is in the oven right now, is if I'd had some leftover mashed potatoes, I could have added it onto the top so that those potatoes are warming up and browning. But that's just a nice to do. It's not a need to do. You can have the potatoes on the side, or rice or noodles or whatever you want on there. Our gravy is about ready to go here, and our meatloaf is ready to go. So the timer has gone off. We are at 45 minutes. I did put the broiler on for just a couple of minutes to finish up the bacon on that one. But here we go. Here's the moment of truth. There we go. Sizzling goodness here. And then I'm going to bring it over to the cutting board. And then you can see what they're like with the filling in the middle. This is the one with the mushrooms and onions and the Swiss cheese. So there we go. Wow. There we go. There we go. And end piece doesn't have quite as much filling in it, so if you've got somebody that doesn't like mushrooms and onions, they can have the end piece. And then we have this beautiful gravy. So for this one, we'll just give it a little drizzle of gravy over the top. And there you go. So that's the first one. That's Swiss cheese, mushrooms, onions. And then we'll go for the bacon. Turn that around. This is broccoli and smoked cheddar with the bacon on the outside. So we got lots of smoky flavors in this one. There we go. So I don't think we have much need for, well, you can put gravy on this one, but I don't know that you need it on that one. So that's our 2 meatloaves. A little bit fancier than just plain meatloaf, but the same mixture for everything that we do along here. There we go. There we go. So, hope you enjoy bacon wrapped meatloaf, and also our mushroom and onion meatloaf. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe, and tune in next week when we're making pumpkin pie. Thanks very much for joining us.